Okay, so last night, Representative Liz Cheney took to the floor of the House her last night as, I forget what, conference chairwoman or whatever the fuck her title was. Third in line in House leadership. So Representative Liz Cheney last night giving an impassioned speech.
You know, the topic, Mr. Speaker, is cancel culture. I have some thoughts about that. But tonight, I rise to discuss freedom and our constitutional duty to protect it. Mr. Speaker, I have been privileged to see firsthand how powerful and how fragile freedom is. 28 years ago, I stood outside a polling place, a schoolhouse in Western Kenya. Soldiers had chased away people who were lined up to vote. A few hours later, they came streaming back in, risking further attack, undaunted in their determination to exercise their right to vote. In 1992, I sat across a table from a young mayor in Nizhny Novgorod, Russia, and I listened to him talk of his dream of liberating his nation from communism. Years later, for his dedication to the cause of freedom, Boris Nemtsov was assassinated by Vladimir Putin's thugs. In Warsaw in 1990, I listened to a young Polish woman tell me that her greatest fear was that people would forget. They would forget what it was like to live under Soviet domination, that they would forget the price of freedom. 3 men, an immigrant who escaped Castro's totalitarian regime, a young man who grew up behind the Iron Curtain and became his country's Minister of Defense.
So even in her...
a dissident who spent years...
Even in her condemnation of Trump and the Republican Party and their unwillingness to accept the truth about the election, she had to come out and like bash communism, socialism, Marxism. Got to come out with the Red Scare tactics.
In the Soviet Gulag have all told me it was the miracle of America, captured in the words of President Ronald Reagan, that inspired them. And I have seen the power of faith and freedom. I listened to Pope John Paul II speak to thousands in Nairobi in 1985. And 19 years later, I watched that same Pope take my father's hands, look in his eyes, and say, "God bless America." God has blessed America, Mr. Speaker.
I can't believe the Pope didn't take your father's hands, look into his eyes, and immediately just like his head explode on fire because he was looking at the literal fucking devil.
But our freedom only survives if we protect it, if we honor our oath taken before God.
This is Dick Cheney's daughter, in
To
case
support and defend
anyone is
the
unaware.
Constitution.
Former vice president.
If we recognize threats to freedom when they arise. Today, we face a threat America has never seen before. A former president who provoked a violent attack on this Capitol in an effort to steal the election has resumed his aggressive effort to convince Americans that the election was stolen from him. He risks inciting further violence. Millions of Americans have been...
Apparently, he had a bombshell announcement about something having to do with a court ruling in Michigan about the election. I don't know, because I didn't fucking read it, and I don't think anybody else did either, because nobody's paying attention to his little WordPress blog site he's got.
been misled by the former president. They have heard only his words, but not the truth, as he continues to undermine our democratic process, sowing seeds of doubt about whether democracy really works at all.
We like sowing the seeds of
I am
love
a
around here.
Republican, and the most conservative
Well,
of
tears for
conservative
fears for you.
principles is reverence for the rule of law. The Electoral College has voted. More than 60 state and federal courts, including multiple judges the former president appointed, have rejected his claims. The Trump Department of Justice investigated the former president's claims of widespread fraud
Safest
and found no
election
evidence to
in
support them.
history.
The election
That's what
is
his
over. That is the rule of law.
DHS cybersecurity
That is our
expert said.
constitutional process. Those who refuse to accept the rulings of our courts are at war with the Constitution. Our duty is clear. Every one of us who has sworn the oath must act to prevent the unraveling of our democracy. This is not about policy. This is not about partisanship.
I'm enjoying the unraveling of your party, though.
As Americans, remaining silent and ignoring the lie emboldens the liar.
Yes.
I will not participate in that. I will not sit back and watch in silence while others lead our party down a path that abandons the rule of law and joins the former president's crusade to undermine our democracy. As the party of Reagan, Republicans have championed democracy, won the Cold War, and defeated the Soviet communists. Today,
Reagan.
America is on the cusp of another Cold War, this time with communist China. Attacks against our democratic process and the rule of law empower our adversaries and
China is not an aggressor, by the way. Now, we can talk about them building islands to create military bases and shit. In like the South China, they're like, that's a whole other can of worms, but like China has spent like fucking nothing on war in the last fucking 50 years. Compared to America, it's all we goddamn do. So what Cold War? The thing that China's doing is going around to all these underfunded, underdeveloped countries and being like, here, let us be your big brother and build roads and fucking bridges and schools and shit for you. And they're getting a foothold all over the world. We need to compete with China doing that kind of shit. Not saber rattling like we're going to go over and bomb the crap out of them. But I mean, she's a Cheney. What do you expect?
feed communist propaganda that American democracy is a failure. We must speak the truth.
American democracy isn't a failure.
Stolen, and America.
Democracy always saves us.
I received a message
It's
last
capitalism that's the failure, ma'am.
who said, "Standing up for the truth honors all who gave all." We must all strive to be worthy of the sacrifice of those who have died for our freedom.
Because that annoys me more than anything. She put it as a dichotomy between communism and democracy. Communism is an economic system. Communism, capitalism. Democracy is a form of government. What the Republicans always try to scare people about is totalitarianism. The regime she was talking about were totalitarian or authoritarian. That's the problem. Democracy is the answer. The Republican Party doesn't like democracy.
They're the patriots Catherine Lee Bates described in the words of America the Beautiful when she wrote, "O beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life." Ultimately, Mr. Speaker, this is at the heart of what our oath requires, that we love our country more, that we love her so much that we will stand above politics to defend her, that we will do everything in our power to protect our Constitution and our freedom that has been paid for by the blood of so many. We must love America so much that we will never yield in her defense. That is our duty.
Who was the audience for that? Who was that a speech to? Because if that was meant to endear her to me or the left, I get Romney, yeah. We're going to talk about that. There's like 100 Republicans who are calling for a reform or a new party. I guess that's the audience. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. Of course, the vote to remove her from her leadership position taking place earlier today. It took only 16 minutes before the House Republican Conference met Wednesday morning to oust. Oh shit!
Do, everything I can.
We're gonna come back to her statement here in just a second. Before the House Republican Conference met Wednesday morning to oust the Wyoming Congresswoman from her position as the third-ranking Republican member in Congress, sources told CNN they expected it to be quick. But it happened so quickly that some members arrived just in time for the vote. It stood in contrast to the more than 4-hour meeting and vote that took place on February 4th that kept Cheney in leadership at the time, following her vote to impeach former President Donald Trump for his role in inciting the January 6th insurrection. Today's meeting began with Cheney giving remarks to her colleagues, where she once again called out Trump for the big lie that the 2020 election was stolen, and other Republicans who aided his efforts to overturn the loss, charging that she would lead the fight to restore our party and our nation to conservative principles. Sources told CNN that when she criticized Trump, she was booed by some of her colleagues. She concluded her remarks with a prayer, which earned her a standing ovation, according to Rep. Ken Buck. Then, Representative Virginia Foxx of North Carolina made the motion to recall Cheney, thus formally beginning the process of removing her as conference chair. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy spoke briefly and a voice vote was called. Because it was a voice vote, there is no tally of those who supported or opposed Cheney. A source in the room told CNN that McCarthy made the same points he wrote in his letter released on Monday before the vote. Another source told CNN that 5 lawmakers stood to request a recorded vote to remove Cheney from the leadership, but that did not happen and the gavel came down. Wow. Oh, that's crazy. So they didn't want a record of who voted for and against her. We don't even know if she actually got ousted. I bet it was close. It sure is cancel culture. All right, so we go ahead. We'll listen to her comments. This is after she was removed from her leadership position.
And to ensure that the former president never again gets anywhere near the Oval Office. We have seen the danger that he continues to provoke with his language. We have seen his lack of commitment and dedication to the Constitution. And I think it's very important that we make sure whomever we elect is somebody who will be faithful to the Constitution.
I just want to add one thing. Liz Cheney just said, I will do everything I can to make sure the former president never gets anywhere near the Oval Office. That is her long game. And as she said, she plans to, quote, lead the fight. She is now unleashed. She can say whatever she wants about.
So, good. I'm going to enjoy watching that leading into 2024. That will be fun. Now, I do want to point out that Liz Cheney was far more in line with Trump than Elise Stefanik. I think I said it wrong, actually. I think I heard Nomiki Key say it a different way, and I'm like, oh, I bet that is how it said. But I can't remember. Stefanik? I've been calling her Elise Stefanik. I'm probably butchering it. I spend too much time harping on it. Names are important to people. Call people by their names because, like, people have egos, and like, it's from How to Win Friends and Influence People. Step on Snake. I thought you were actually giving me the phononic. Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm I'm throwing off my game now. But but test. Elise Stefanik only voted with Trump like 70-something% of the time, where Cheney voted with him like 90% of the time on the Trump agenda in the House. So it's weird that they are replacing Cheney with Stefanik. What, Possibot? I have no clue what that is. Here is House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy.
I think that is all over with. We're sitting here with the president today. So from that point of view, I don't think that's a problem.
Fill in the gaps for us, because the White House has talked about a $2 trillion package, give or take, by raising corporate tax. Republicans are talking about $500-600 billion on infrastructure, user fees. You don't want to raise corporate taxes. They don't want user fees. There's a lot of zeros and commas in between. How do you come up with some sort of middle ground?
Not to negotiate here, but you won't find any Republicans going to go raise taxes. I think that's the worst thing you can do in this economy when you watch him.
Well, he's absolutely wrong. We've got the data that proves him wrong. But this was before they met with Biden. This was like the first time all the leadership of the House, Senate sat down with the White House since like 2017. It's like apparently the time that like Nancy Pelosi wagged her finger at Trump, he just was like, nope, no more.
Mistake you could make. Remember the economy we had when we lowered taxes.
So yeah, they're not talking about it anymore, but like his point was that nobody is questioning the legitimacy of the 2020 election, but we're going to see what happens when Cyber Ninja finishes their audit in Maricopa County in Arizona. More than 100 Republican former officials to seek reforms and are threatening a new party. They released a call for reforms within the GOP alongside a threat to form a new party if change isn't forthcoming, a person familiar with the effort said. The statement set to be released Thursday involves a call for American renewal. The credo that declares that it is imperative to either reimagine a party dedicated to our founding ideals or else hasten the creation of such an alternative. We might actually be seeing the split of the Republican Party. They're wigging themselves out of existence. The push will include 13 yet to be revealed principles that the signatories want the GOP to embrace. This is not the first group to form and it's just like the Lincoln Project that's going to come out like they were molesting children or something. That's the track record of Republican groups. This is not the first group to form as the pro-Trump and traditional conservative factions of the Republican Party. The new effort comes as a vote looms to oust Liz Cheney. Clearly, this was written before the vote, which took place earlier today. The move was first reported by Reuters, which cited some of the people involved. Former New Jersey Governor Christine Todd Whitman, Tom Ridge, Mary Peters, Charlie Dent, Barbara Comstock. All completely irrelevant figures. Evan McMullen. Wow, that's really gonna be... That's going to make some headlines. That isn't Liz Cheney, and you've got some real star power there. A push to channel anti-Trump sentiment with the Never Trump movement in the spring of 2016 was largely unsuccessful at the time, and none of the people backing this latest effort are serving as elected Republicans. However, it comes as Trump's pull within the party appears to have lessened. A recent NBC News poll found that 44% of Republicans said they support Trump more than the GOP, compared to 50% who said they support the GOP more than the former president. I kind of find that hard to believe. I think the Republican Party is full of absolute nut jobs and morons. One of the biggest morons in the Republican Party, Marjorie Taylor Greene.